The official Vintage Guitar Magazine Price Guide has partnered with 33 of the top guitar dealers in the industry to provide the most accurate values for thousands of models. This includes electric guitars, acoustic guitars, basses, amplifiers, effects, mandolins, and banjos. Whether your instrument is an investment or simply a piece you enjoy playing, it's always helpful to know what it's worth. If you're checking out a guitar at your local shop and want to know its value before making the purchase, this guide is your go-to source for all the details. Available in both print and digital editions, you can have the guide right at your fingertips no matter where you go.
Hello and welcome to Buy That Guitar, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine. I'm your host, Ram Tuli. This podcast is about the joy of guitar. That includes buying guitars, selling guitars, collecting guitars. We're talking vintage guitars, new guitars, used guitars, pre-war, flat tops, electric Spanish arch tops, custom shop guitars, limited edition guitars, basses, amps, effect pedals, lap steels, mandolins, banjo. If it has strings, we're going to talk about it. I spent most of my life studying the vintage guitar market. It's truly something I love and I'm passionate about. I can talk guitars all day, and I'm going to. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another thrilling and exciting edition of Buy That Guitar. Today, I'm joined by my two buddies, Robb Lawrence and Kim Shaheen. I basically kidnapped them on the way over here. They are physically in the studio with me. Kim lives down the street from me, so it's not like I had to go way out of my way. And Robb, you're kind of like hanging out in Phoenix this winter. I'm
looking for a home up in northern Arizona.
Looking for a home. So if you want to adopt Robb.
No, I'm from San Diego, and I'm moving to Arizona, northern Arizona.
You're going to love it. You're going to love the first summer.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So anyways, let me introduce these guys. Everybody, you know how there's the most interesting man in the world? You ever see that commercial? Well, these two guys, I would put them in the most interesting men in the world, but they also happen to be part of the vintage guitar world as well. So what better way to end season 3 than to bring my two buddies in, and we're just going to talk. And let me give you a background. Robb is basically a living bridge between the golden age of guitar invention and today's modern players. Someone who didn't just study the history, but lived it, documented it, and played alongside some of the giants who made it. And Kim, as most of you know, is a veteran session guitarist and vintage guitar collector with a career spanning over 5 decades. He's best known for his work in the late 60s and 70s London music scene, contributing to the numerous recordings, some that are gold and some that are platinum, and brushing shoulders with rock legends. Both men have been living in the vintage guitar lifestyle since before you were even born, most of you. So let's talk. Now, you guys are in the news recently. It's, you know how Kim was telling me, you see people walking around with a Fender Stratocaster shirt and it says, since 1954. Kim, what's wrong with that shirt?
Well, I want to take that shirt and get some swag. Mm-hmm. I want to keep the shirt the way it is, but cross out 1954 and put 1953, because I'm fortunate enough to know Robb Lawrence, who knew where the original 1953 prototype Strat was, because he knew the family. They were friends of his. And Robb is like, hey, you want to come in on this? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And we acquired the original prototype. I'll let Robb tell the story. So let's
talk about this prototype. Most of you guys, the funny thing is, here's something very interesting. As soon as you acquired this guitar, you remember you guys came down. I was at the Orange County Amigo show, and we brought that guitar and we put it on the vintage guitar table. Remember that? We put it on the guitar table, and people were walking by going, "What is that?" And we're trying to explain, "Oh, it's bullshit. That's not the You remember that? And I even took a picture and we put it up on we put it up on the Vintage Guitar Magazine social media. Well, look what we have at the vintage, come to the Vintage Guitar booth. Well, and people were like, that's bullshit. That's not the real thing. That's but
there's always disbelief when something is supernatural.
Yeah. And that is the real deal. And we know it's the real deal.
Well, because of Leo Fender's photographs. So when him and Freddie and George finished the guitar in '53, it was their second attempt at the Strat, because the first Strat had a vibrato that was set back on the body like a jazz master, and it never worked. And those were all destroyed. So George Fullerton's father built this particular body out of a heavy ash, And this is the very guitar that they did the fulcrum vibrato with Freddie Tavares.
Right. And this was, of course, the first
modern Stratocaster.
Modern Stratocaster.
Documented with Leo Fender's photographs.
Yeah, Jeff Fullerton's father.
Well, George Fullerton's father built the body.
Right.
And it had a 53 neck from the prior run that was destroyed. So.
Right. We know that because if you have the Smith book, there's like 4 or 5 pictures of this guitar in the Smith book.
3.
And I brought that book to you. I'm like, look, and you're like, that's it, because they had Now, when we say heavy ash, we're not bullshitting. This is heavy ash.
Well, for a Strat, it's heavy, but it's 8.3, which is light for a Les Paul.
Yeah. But it
sounds great at a distance on stage. When I perform with this guitar, people in the back of the room can hear a full-bodied Stratocaster.
Right. Now, is this the Stratocaster that Bill Carson takes out?
No.
So the one that he took out that said it sounded like a banjo, that was the first tremolo
system. That was the early Strat with the first contours and the early vibrato that never worked.
So Freddie shows up. They decide to go with the inertia block.
Well, Noel Boggs, the steel player, brought Freddie in. And Freddie was a player from Hawaii and a designer and a real guitar player, session guy. And you hear him on the Looney Tunes recording.
Right, the very beginning.
With Blue Hawaii with Elvis. And so he basically had the idea for a fulcrum vibrato with Leo, and they developed it with the Rayson Olmsted, with Carl Olmsted.
Across the alley.
So this very vibrato is handmade.
Right. So you guys, now the thing is, the 3 springs, that didn't last long. Do you know why they immediately went from 3? They just found that they needed more mass on the block, or is it because they needed more strength or more tension?
The block changed from aluminum to steel because aluminum didn't sound very good. And the 3 springs weren't adequate for the strings of that era, the heavier strings, to really lay into this guitar and to make it work properly. So the 53 has the 3 springs, while the 54, of course, has 5.
Right. So now this guitar, the history of this guitar, it was taken apart. What year?
It was dismantled in 53 as they were developing, when they made the very first samples of the 54. And so Tommy Madera played in the band with Freddie Tavares, and Leo Fender photographed him with the guitar in its second incarnation with a 54 neck and 54 pickups.
Was this body carved at all by, how there's the folklore that this thing was, Bill Carson takes out a buck knife and shaves. Is this the body that was shaved?
No. This is the body that Fred Fullerton built.
Actually built it on the lathe, actually rolled it?
Well, he used, they had their body template and the routing template, and so they developed a new routing template for the vibrato. And it has the flat contour like an early precision contour.
Right. So this, I think that one of the benefits of living down the street from you, Kim, is that I could come over and I used to be able to play this guitar anytime I wanted. I'd sit on your bed and just jam with it. But I can't do that right now because where is this guitar?
I dropped it off at the Fullerton Museum last month for a display to show the guitar because it was designed and built right around the corner.
Right.
And so Jeff Fullerton and Fred Stewart and I are shooting a Fender movie, which is going to be very interesting. We had Leo Fender's nephew, Gary, join us a few weeks ago, and we're going to shoot again this month. So we're going to feature the 53 in that, as well as, the Esquire development and the Epiphone, how the Fender was really designed by George Fullerton and Leo based on an Epiphone scale length and neck shape.
Right. So let's this body, this guitar, the first Stratocaster that we call this,
modern
the first
Strat.
modern Stratocaster, it's taken apart, it's disassembled. The box is the body is sitting in a box, and Madera just takes it home.
Well, yeah, he brought it home with another Fender employee, and they put a 54 neck on it without a decal and 54 pickups, and he started playing it. And he performed. There was another guitar player that played with it too, one of George's relatives. They played for these different functions, and Freddie Tavares is on steel guitar and Tommy Madera on the 53, 54 Strat. So eventually his son Jerry, who I met when he had the guitar, showed it to me, and I photographed it. about 15 years ago.
Was that for the Vintage Guitar magazine article, or was this for a separate?
Willie did that, but this is at the Pomona show. So that's when I first saw it, and Jerry Madera had some tweed Telecaster bags that you put over your shoulder. Pretty cool.
Did this have the Telecaster neck on it at that time?
It had a 2006 neck on it, all parts neck, really nice neck. And so he was playing it like that. But he did paint it red years before when it had the 54 neck. And then he stripped the red off it. So it's back to natural.
One of the early things we did when you first got the body was now it was imperative to find the original neck.
Well, the 53 neck, of course, is lost to, the heavens somewhere. It was very yellowed, orange, like from the fumes in the tool and die maker shop. And so it was discarded, basically. And the 54 neck was sold on a 62 Telecaster by Jerry before he went to Vietnam. So the neck was gone. So when we got it, I put my 63C with Stratocaster neck on it. And that was how I showed it to Sonny Landreth and a few other players. And then I put my 56 neck on it with a gold parts from my old Strat. And so basically it's had the 56 neck until Kim found the 57C neck, a 1 3/4 neck, like Freddie Tavares' 54 Strat that I played. And he told me about has a nice.
It was Kim. That was in Europe, wasn't it?
No, Bill Pandolfi in Florida, a respected dealer, told me that he bought Jerry's Telly, the 62 Telly with the Strat neck. And when I talked to him, he goes, "Yeah, I bought that." He gave me the number of Dr. Smith, an emergency room doctor in Chicago, who didn't like the neck, and then sold it to me, and that's the neck on it now. And Bill said, yes, that's the neck that was on Jerry
Telecaster.
Madera on the Telly. So oddly enough, Blondie Chaplin just tried to call me.
Tell him we'll call him back.
We'll call you back, Blondie. And Randy.
Talk about guitar archaeology.
Yeah, that's the neck that's on the guitar now.
So you basically have to put this thing back together again and try to get it back to as much as original as you possibly can.
Yeah. Well, it had the phenolic pickguard. It had, the 58 pickups that Tommy Madera put in at the factory in 58. So it had the reverse polarity pickups when we got it. So basically what we bought was a 53 Stratocaster prototype body and the original whammy bar, thanks to Zappa's.
So we could safely say that we're going to call this the first official modern Stratocaster.
Yeah, and that's what Richard called it in his book.
Yep.
So it's the beginning of the revolution of the Stratocaster that is the most popular guitar in the world. And Freddie Tavares, in my interviews with him in '73, told me that when they finished the vibrato and they photographed the guitar, that they felt they had designed and built the greatest electric guitar in the world.
And they did.
They were right.
They were right.
They did it.
One thing I want to point out, Kim, you just did an interview with Jim Safran at Pure Vintage. And you guys get into the nuts and bolts about your music career. And I invite everybody, please go and read, because we don't want to revisit those sordid details here in this family-friendly. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, it's important that, because you and I have been buddies for a while, and I love your stories. As we're driving around, I'll hear about this. But I want to know about how is it that a 16-year-old kid winds up in London, of all places, and how does that open this magnificent door to this guitar-playing lifestyle that you will spend the rest of your life in?
So I should talk about how I got Sid Barrett Brill Cream from the American store so he could mix it with Mandrex and put it in his hair. That was pretty weird.
I wonder if that's what happened. No, I'm not going to go into.
Well, I never asked him why he did it because it was just strange. Yeah, I was going to school in Hawaii, and my mom drank. She did. You did, Mom, but I wouldn't have had anything if it hadn't happened. Mm-hmm. And she's asking me, would it be good for your career? Well, I'm like 15, 16. Mm-hmm. Oh, career. I hung out with Dewey Martin from Springfield and done some stuff. But I knew would it be good for your career if we moved to, I know she's going to say Hollywood. And she goes, if we move to London. You can't ask a 16-year-old boy in the 60s if they want to move to London. So we did.
Mm-hmm. And then the rest is history, as they say.
Well, apparently I was one of the only people with a Ricky 12 in England. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the first ads, looking for a guitarist, must be fluent on 12-string. And I'm like, I have a 12-string. And I went, and I'm playing my songs for these three guys. And Michael Rutherford goes, this guy's too good, I'm switching back to bass. And I didn't know who Genesis was. I had no idea. You know, I'm new from America. Apparently, I got that audition and passed. Mm-hmm. Put together some tracks on what became Trespass. Peter sent me the album, sent me a letter asking me to come back. I wasn't really into Genesis. If I'd known what he was going to do in the solo stuff, I would have stayed and waited. But as it turned out, Jerry Beckley and I became best friends. And a guy named Dewey Bunnell was our recording engineer. And that became the beginning of the band America because, I think people heard Horse with No Name and thought it was Neil Young because Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young had broken up. And my copy of the America album doesn't have that song on it. So they shelved the album, put it back out. We're at CBS at the record plant recording the second album. And Jerry asked me, well, I can tell this. He goes, what do you think we should call the album? And I go, how about an album with no name? He has not talked to me since that day.
But that's actually a good idea, though.
I thought it was funny. Now, Homecoming was a much better name.
Yeah.
But come on. It's been 50 years.
Like, one of the things, like I think that's important to point out. Like, here's an American, there's that play, American in Paris. Well, here's an American in London, and he's got a Ricky 12-string. And it basically gets you in everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, that's, you're hanging out with Steve Winwood. And
Frisbees. I introduced Winwood and Chris Wood to Frisbees.
Yeah. Now, you said you had an epiphany, right?
Yeah. I was like 13, and I went to go see my friend's band play, and he's playing an SG. He puts it down and picks up a Ricky 12. And you always sold your guitar to get another guitar. And for the first time it was, you can own more than one guitar. It was shock. And that has guided me and Robb ever since. You can have more than one guitar. And you, with amplifiers and guitars.
Yeah. But I've slowed down in my old age. Mainly because my wife told me she'd beat me over the head with anything I bring in. To me, it's like I invite people, please listen to the Jim Safran interview because you go into detail about all this. Is just a fascinating, a 16-year-old in London, just let loose, right? Robb, I knew you were important when I was at a Dallas show, and you and I were kind of hanging out. Remember with TV Jones, and then we went over to Chris Blakely. I'm sorry. So
Chris Blakely with a
so you and I are hanging out, and Chris Blakely and Derek St. Holmes is there, and he's got the Kossoff burst there, right? And it's just sitting there, and
I had played it years ago when I was with Paul Kossoff.
So we were sitting there, so Chris and I were just talking, and you say to Chris, I want to photograph this. I'm going to photograph this. So, okay, so you take it out of the case. I think you had the dumpster flying V there as well.
We went outside and I photographed.
That's what you say. You say, I want to go outside. The light's not good in here. So I knew you were somebody when Chris was like, okay, and he hands you the Kossoff burst, and you just take it outside on the front page, we put a blanket down and we start photographing it.
It was a velour background.
Something, yeah. And I just remember, like, so we're out in front of the Dallas Marketplace Arena, and you're photographing this thing, and people are walking by, and they were like, "Oh, that's a nice. Is that the custom shop? And we're like, yeah. But then I knew, I go, this guy. Somebody would hand this guy the Kossoff burst. He must be important.
Well, I photograph instruments outdoors for natural lighting, so that they come alive and look good in my books with Hal Leonard. And so basically, with flame maple, you want to get a nice chatoyance. So, and I started photographing guitars in the late 60s as a hobby, basically.
Can I interject here? All the coolest pictures of Leo Fender with tellies and basses and the Rickenbackers with Hall in them, Robb took those photos. And he doesn't get credited all the time. I make a point of it.
Well, my pictures are pirated by people.
Yeah. But his are the most famous pictures that you see.
Yeah. It is. I don't know if this is true or not, but Leo Fender had a photograph on his desk that has you in it.
It was the only picture in his office, and McLaren told me at Lucille Fullerton's memorial that there was one picture of Leo in his office with Doc Kaufman and me.
Yep.
And it was a photo session and a day that Doc Kaufman and I spent with Leo Fender. It was a magical day, and I had my 52 Precision with me. So I took a portrait of Leo with a 52 Precision, and then one of Leo's friends took a photograph of Leo and Doc and I. And Doc had the greatest stories. He was, and thankfully, after he did the Rickenbacker and the Vibrola and the motorized guitar, he got Leo into building steel guitars, and the rest is history.
Yep. Now, this is kind of an aside, and I'm going to do a tangent. What just happened at GNL? Do you know? Do you have any insight?
Well, I got a phone call from Diane Fullerton, and she used to go to the factory with her father a lot, and knew all the different artists that Fender used and so forth. And she was really worried, and then Jeff Fullerton and I talked about it, and evidently Fender had bought GNL, and a lot of the extra stuff was thrown away in dumpsters.
Cut up.
Yeah, it was somewhat cut up and stuff. I scored a neck, a 5-string fretless neck, GNL, and a couple pickups for a project I'm doing with a 5-string bass. And
but
so,
it just like that, right? Overnight.
Well, all of a sudden everything is thrown into a dumpster that, was the excess stuff. Fender came in and got a lot of stuff out of Leo's office.
They did take the historical stuff.
And then some of it didn't. And then the paint tables that they did all the paint mixing on.
So do you know is Fender thinking of keeping the GNL going, or is it?
I don't think they will. I don't know. I haven't talked to Joey about it, but I'm going to ask him.
It's strange. It just happened. This is like a
recent
which is
thing. A sad demise for the
This was
legacy of George Fullerton and Leo Fender.
Yeah, huge.
They did something really important over the years, and I just recently bought a Fullerton Signature Strat, which I adore. It got the dual fulcrum vibrato on it, and it's an ash body. It's kind of a Santa Burst, and when George and I became close with the Fullerton family in the early 70s when I interviewed George for my articles in Guitar Player magazine, Rare Bird.
I guess we can talk, but before we get to your Rare Bird articles, let's talk about, you have 2 books, right, on Les Paul.
Yes.
And I'm a pretty critical guy when it comes to books because I write books on. I don't know if I sent you an email or if I posted it something. I thought when I read your modern, I basically borrowed it from Kim because I needed it to do some research for one of my podcasts, and it was called The Modern Era. It's the second book, your 2009 book.
Yeah.
And I read through that. I was blown away. I was blown away by the fact that, like, as far as like a book about Les Pauls and the photographs of the Les Pauls and just the story of these Les Pauls, because that's an era that nobody talks about, like 1968 on. We really don't talk about Les Paul.
Well, I lived it because I taught guitar at La Jolla Music, and the Gibson rep in 67, early 68 said, well, we're reissuing the Les Paul guitar. I had just bought a 61 SG Les Paul Standard SG. And so I was, becoming familiar, plain Gibson guitars.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
he said the new guitars are coming out. So
Mm-hmm.
when the Les Paul Custom Black Beauty and the Gold Top came in, the 56 reissue, I got to take them out of the boxes and look at them and go, wow, Les Paul guitars have returned. Yay.
And these were, people like those. I mean, they're heavier than I don't know.
Some were light, but...
Some were light. But I mean, there's, to me, the price of those used to be cheap. They're not cheap anymore.
Well, they were pretty cheap at $3,000 or $4,000, but then all of a sudden it jumped up.
Yeah,
of course.
And people always, like if you ever watched the Rolling Stones circus, or Brian Jones is playing one of those brand new. He's playing it out of tune, and ever on the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus, that's like a brand new Gibson Les Paul, but it looks like a '56. But
Bruce Boland was behind the developing that in '67. Mm-hmm. And they had made a few other solid body customs like the Epiphone double cutaway and the black guitar.
So so about 1972, you get to know Les Paul. Was that about when you met him?
Well, it happened through Bud Eastman, the founder of Guitar Player magazine, and I came to Phoenix here to buy a Les Paul Sunburst, a 60 Tiger Top, and so when I picked up the guitar in Phoenix, there was a couple that were visiting my girlfriend's parents in their RV, and he was a jazz guitar buff. He was into Johnny Smith and all that, and he said, well, you love guitars, you should talk to Bud Eastman. He's founder of Guitar Player magazine. He's in San Diego where you live. So when I got back to San Diego with my burst, I called Bud, and it was his birthday, and he invited my bass player and I over to come jam. So we jammed with Bud Eastman. And then as I got to know Bud, he said, well, you got to go visit Les Paul. And so one of my best friends, Steve Rodriguez, and I took off on the original Guitar Safari in '72 in July, and we traveled across the country. We spent a week with George Gruen, Nashville, photographed his old Martins. And then we went out to the East Coast and we visited Mr. Martin, Christian Frederick III, did an interview with him. And that's when I discovered the 0034 existed, which is here on my left. Yep. And so then we went up and we spent a couple of days with Les Paul and Wally Kamen, the man behind Les Paul, his bass player. And so it was a lot of fun to get to know Les and hear his story of how the electric guitar began.
And so that's why I think your books about Les Paul, his legacy, are probably the best books written about Les Paul and his legacy, because you were basically friends. And
I became his protege, and I lived with Les Paul in '75. We traveled across the country together, and I became his guitar tech for the West Coast.
So, I think you and I were talking one time, and we discussed the fact that Gibson basically bought Les Paul's name, but Les Paul would not. He'd sell him his name, but he would not sell him his sound. And they basically, I think you write this in your book.
Well, Gibson had developed their solid body guitar in response to Fender, and Larry Allers is the man behind the Les Paul guitar. And they experimented with maple top, but the Ranger was original. Julius Belson told me about the 16-inch solid body that was way too heavy, and then the Ranger was a 13-inch solid body with a pickup in the middle with no cutaway, like a Junior without a cutaway. So then when they applied the arch top and they did the maple, they had a sharp cutaway. And so when Ted McCarty brought this up, actually, Tiny Timberwolf suggested Les Paul endorse the guitar because he was number one in the downbeat.
Yeah, he had more number one hits than anybody in that
Well, he
era.
was with, he had just had the hits with Mary Ford, and he was with Andrews Sisters and Crosby before. So basically, at the hunting lodge, Ben Sullivan, yes, we have no bananas. Les and Mary saw the guitar, the sharp cutaway Sunburst model. We have the natural sharp cutaway 51 prototype. But the Sunburst one, they made a half a dozen prototypes, of course. And so Les liked the guitar and told Mary, I think we should join them. And so basically they went ahead and stayed up all night, and they did the famous contract on a napkin.
Did they? Yeah, who came up with the idea? Was that Ted's idea, or was it Les Paul's idea to make it gold?
Well, the gold decision was last minute because they were tooled up to do a couple 40 batches, and they were all book match maple. They were going to be
look
sunburst.
nice.
The Les Paul was going to be sunburst
sunburst
in the beginning. And they made a mistake with a neck angle, and Les asked to have his trapeze tailpiece used, which he developed in Roy Van Ness's garage nearby in Mahwah. And so basically they put the strings underneath the bar.
That's
couldn't
historically that 52 Les Paul with angle. People just didn't like it.
You couldn't chicken pick with your right hand.
Is that because I think historically we know that was his main contribution to that guitar was that bridge, right? The trapeze bridge,
which he had a patent on, but
he wasn't the one that said painted gold. Or was
yes, he asked. He had a 175 done in gold for a friend in the hospital.
Okay, that's right.
And so that's a predecessor to the 295. Right. But basically, at the last minute, Les Paul asked them to use this green bronze finish in the lacquer to create the guitars and make it look rich. And so they abandoned the sunburst Les Paul in the very beginning and did them in gold. And they had to separate that whole part of the factory spraying gold because it just got into everything.
Well, I heard that's a very hard, that's a finish that is very hard to do.
Not easy.
That's why nobody else could even think about doing something like that.
So in my opinion, they should have done an option as gold. And they should have had an option 25.5 scale, like their advanced L5 and Super 400.
Did Les want maple? Did Les want maple, or did he want mahogany on that cap?
Well, that was Ted McCarty's decision with Larry Allers.
Okay.
And so Les, they said, "Oh, we're going to hide the maple top, so people can't tell." But you could see it in the cutaway anyway, so it didn't really make much difference. But basically, for so many years, 52 and the 58, they were gold. There was a few sunbursts along the line. Dave Crocker had a 56 with a tunematic that was sunburst, Cremona's sunburst.
How come they got the 295 neck angle right, but they didn't get the Les Paul angle right?
Well, the 295 and the 225 had a certain angle for the Les Paul trapeze to be over the top of the strings, the way it was intended to be built. And then the later reissue of the 52 had the strings over the trapeze as well.
And but what really was it? They just decided they had already had all the tool and die. They were just going to go with it with the wrap underneath the string underneath the bar. Didn't somebody stop say?
Well, Walt Fuller, who did the bar magnet pickup and the P90, and electronic engineer, told me that they wanted to get the pickup seated low into the body for a good tone, and they wanted the strings to be fairly low to the pickups, and so they changed the idea and got the strings underneath the bar, and they had already developed the tunematic in 52.
Because they had used it on some of the big arch tops by then.
Well, yeah, the tunematic arrived in 53, but they designed it in 52, and they could have put it on the Les Paul and the bar tailpiece, the stop tailpiece too. So they jumped out of the gate, with a wrong neck angle and so forth.
They made quite a few. Like they made almost 4,000 with that wrong neck angle. Isn't that crazy?
From early 52 into
about mid 53. They basically
about a year they made gold tops,
and they made quite a bit.
And the transition model was with the wrong neck angle and a stop tailpiece and the action too high. I've seen a few of those too, and it's got the hole through the body for the ground.
So let's go back. So Les Paul has a tone to himself, right? He was a genius as far as sound.
He was a tinkerer.
Right.
And so
why is it now we get to like the late 60s, 63, they make the Les Paul recording, the personal and the professional. He finally gets them to make.
Well, Les started experimenting with low impedance, like a microphone, like the German mics, because he wants the full spectrum of highs and lows. And so he's had Wally winding pickups for him in the 50s, and Les started recording with low impedance in the 50s, and you can hear it on the records.
Right. When Gibson gave him that gold top to use, How High the Moon, whatever, you see pictures of him with it modified already.
Well, How High the Moon was the Epiphone, with Epiphone and Bigsby pickups. So when they started, and when the guitars came out, then Les started tinkering with de-armament pickups and this and that, So everything got cut up virtually.
So like we talk about the modern era, and Les Paul, they finally, for some reason, Gibson, they had to play nice with Les Paul to come back.
Well,
why do they decide to do the recording, the personal and the professional?
Well, Les was doing a show, and he dedicated a song to the girls out in the front row, and everybody laughed because it was the Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
And so backstage, Keith Richards and Bill Wyman said, we love your Les Paul guitars. You should have them built again.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to Gibson, called Mr. Berlin, and said, what's going on? He said, well, I'm standing here in Kalamazoo, and there's nothing going on but SGs and 335s. And Les says, well, let's bring the Les Paul back. And so he says, well, come on out. Let's talk about it. So when him and Wally came out to Chicago and sat down with Mr. Berlin, he said, well, I've got something else going on here, which I want to do as well, which is Low Z, which
mm-hmm.
is full spectrum sound. And so Les gave him part of the formula,
mm-hmm.
not the whole formula. Les always kind of held back a little bit. And he didn't have that much input, of course, on the 52 Les Paul, except for the finish and the tailpiece. But he wanted the low impedance thing to happen. And so they developed the professional and the personal with a 14-inch body. And they were sandwiched. Some were heavy, some were light,
Mm-hmm.
Some had volutes after the first ones didn't. But the Low Z, was something that sounded unbelievable through the right amplifier. But
right.
Gibson had gone solid state like Fender, so forth. And so the combo with a tube combo, never...
It just didn't take...
Well, they didn't have a low impedance amp to match
Yeah.
the guitar.
And that's the thing.
And so in the
Today-
cable and the battery, all that stuff, it's like a Shure microphone with a little...
Right. So today you could buy like one of these Low Z Les Pauls for recording or the personal professional. You can get them for about $5K, under $5K.
Yeah, but
do you think that like today
they're going to be...
Somebody's going to make a Low Z?
Low Z is coming. I'll
Okay.
put it this way. And I had long conversations with Rusty, Les's son, about it, and other people, and Bill Lawrence too, and Seymour. And so basically, the Low Z guitar has not been realized because there hasn't been a famous artist to endorse the guitar with a matching amp. So I've had conversations with Terry Marshall, Jim's son, about developing a Marshall amp that is matched to the Low Z. So
mm-hmm.
the highs and lows, remember when I tech for Les Paul, I would take his guitar and with the Chuck Burge pickups, who was a designer at Gibson Kalamazoo, and I would plug it into my JTIM 4564, and I would plug it into my 41060 Tweed Bassman, and I would turn that thing up, and I all of a sudden hear a wall of sound with highs and lows that you can't get out of a PAF humbucker or a Stratocaster or Telecaster. The sound is 5.1, it's just unbelievable how big the sound is when you turn the amp up and you get natural curved distortion. So your power amp is creating this smooth distortion and you get a rock edge, but you've got highs and lows that nobody's heard yet. So it's unfounded. It's unknown thus far. Jimmy
mm-hmm.
Page has recorded a little bit with a Les Paul personal. I have a Les Paul professional project I'm doing with a longer scale length because I play the advanced Epiphone
mm-hmm.
Fender scale. So I'm experimenting with that, and the Bigsby too, which is cool.
Les Paul, what did he like? What he didn't use an amp then, right? So he just plugged directly
when
he recorded. What did he do?
Into the board.
He
kept a Gibson amp in the back of his Chevy, a 150 EH amplifier,
mm-hmm.
but in twins. He played through twins. He played through my twin a lot at the House of Blues, my blonde twin with the JBL Showman cabinet. So I got a big sound, and his son Rusty and I and Les would tune his guitar, my amp, to the room. And we'd spend an hour and a half getting Les Paul's sound together for all our shows. Les had a great ear. Les could even tell the difference between a laminated gold top and a one-piece gold top with a maple top.
Right.
He had great ear. And
mm-hmm.
Rusty and I worked together to make sure Les sounded good.
Yeah. Kim, you're over there. I want to wake you up over here. You've been a vintage guy. Like you had a vintage store in Phoenix, but you're thought of more of like a Southern California vintage guy, right?
Well, that's how I feel. The shop we had here was more of, we did everything. repairs, replace pickups. It was just a regular guitar shop. And the way it started, my friend Richard Beck was a luthier, and he called me up. It's like 1981. Goes, I've got a old Telly here, a 54 Telly. Do you want it? And I go, sure. And I lived about 3/4 of a mile away, half mile. I run up and I go, what's the deal? He goes, it's $400. I go, okay, watch. So I get on the phone, 1981. I call Norm Harris or Frank Lucido. I go, I got a 54 Telly, it's yours, $1,000. And they go, he said, sure. And I sold it. And I go, now, Richard, from now on, you call me and we'll split the profit. And that's how it started. And we ended up opening up a shop about a year later where people knew to bring their vintage stuff into me and I would buy it. And if it needed repairs or whatever, Richard would do it. So it worked out really well where we were one of the, well, you had Bizarre Guitar with Bob Turner. You had Bob's Vintage with Bob Coward. And Bob Turner did all the electrics. And Bob Coward did all the acoustics. So we were like the third shop around to do that kind of thing, next to Harvey Moltz at Rainbow in Tucson. But that was all just kind of getting started. You had Groon out in Nashville, you know, Elderly and all the other people, Stan, doing Richie Friedman. But
it's funny, like, so the vintage guitar market has changed dramatically since you started. And it's safe to say, you know, prices skyrocketed here and there. But what about the fakes? The awareness of fakes now? Online sales exploding. What's your take on where it's headed?
That was years later. For us, in the late 60s, they were just used guitars, and we'd find them in the paper for $100.
$100, and you go pick them up.
We get any kind of Fender for $100. Lots of Fender amps. You know, we bought the first Les Paul Sunburst we ever saw for $250, a '58. You know, and then my friend sold it for $400. So Les Paul Sunbursts were, and everything was just used, no vintage. So by the time Guitar Player asked me to write the Rare Bird column, people were waking up to what cool guitars were.
It's about 74-ish?
73, I started with Guitar Player, and they were still used, but, you know, nobody really used vintage yet, not for a year or two. So, and they were starting to pick up, so Les Paul Sunbursts were 1,000, 1,500 or so forth, you know.
Now, according to George Groon, like, there's reasons why like this Les Pauls, Telecasters, Stratocasters were popular, and it was always Michael Bloomfield.
Well, Bloomfield here in the States, he was a dear friend, and I filmed him for the Les Paul movie, The Wizard of Waukesha, and I did some interviews with him. I played with him, and he was a dear friend, and he was very instrumental through Butterfield and the Electric Flag, you know, of pushing the Les Paul.
Did he become attached to his guitars?
Or sure. I would visit him in his home, and we'd play harmony guitars. And, you know, he's a bluesman, but, you know, in Chicago, he didn't have a Les Paul first. He was playing acoustics, you know. And so that's when Gruen met him, when he was still acoustic.
And that's where he gets the gold top with the stop bar?
Well, he's still, in our interview in the film, he talks about, you know, going through the gold top. And then
the Telecaster.
Eventually, you know, getting, well, he had the Telly too, he had a couple. But, yeah, he loved acoustic guitar. And Gruen, when I met him, it was primarily all acoustic. He didn't know anything about electric guitars. You know, had some on their list, but by the time I bought my 0034 from Gruen in '76, they had a fair amount of electric guitars, but Gruen was a historian of old Martins and Gibsons and stuff. So that's fairly new to George, is all this electric stuff.
Yeah, that Telecaster is now for sale with the weird cutaway.
Yeah, well, it's a Retrofret.
Yeah, Retrofret. And, of course, Jimmy Page, his Telecaster on the first Zeppelin album has sold more Les Pauls than any other guitar in history.
Well, Jimmy Page playing a Sunburst sold a lot of Sunbursts. Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck all played Sunbursts. And so, and
that's why in 68, Les Paul goes back to Gibson and says, people are buying these, they're looking for them.
Yeah, so they made a few Sunbursts along the way, but they were gold and black and stuff. And then Page bought his brown Telly from me, which I found in San Diego, and I sent it up to Parsons to put a string puller on it for Page. And then Jeff Beck bought a white 60 Strat from Harvey and I on the Wired tour. So I started selling vintage guitars to British musicians. Entwistle bought my 58 Explorer. It was shipped in 63. So I had my shop at SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals, on the Columbia Movie Lot in Hollywood on Beechwood. And so I was supplying guitars for recording.
One time, I think we were talking, and you were saying that you really, you got the electric guitar bug when you saw, who did you see playing?
Well, as a kid in Hawaii, I saw Hawaiian Calls live at the Banyan Lanai Court at the Ala Moana Hotel. And I saw them playing Martin guitars and ukuleles, and Hilo Hattie was there, and Saul Bright, the Hawaiian cowboy. And so I got music under my skin right then, and we saw Martin Denny play Quiet Village, which is quite amazing. But then in the early 60s, when we came back from Hawaii in 57, and then in 63, when I was, riding skateboards and stuff, I saw this commercial for the Three Musketeers bar with these three actors, and they were on stage playing guitars, singing stuff, for this candy bar ad. And the guitar player had a white SG. Yeah, and that stuck in my mind. Went, wow, look at that guitar.
The custom.
I didn't really know what a Gibson was.
Yeah.
And so as it got my interest then, and then Greg Collier and I, my best friend growing up, we walked around the corner one day when we heard a surf band playing, and it was our friends, and they had a white, they had a EBO bass in red and a Desert Sand Duosonic, like a 57 Duosonic, Paul Yoshihara and Mike. Drums with the Champagne Ludwig drums. So we got the bug to play guitar. And so Greg's grandmother got him a guitar in November of 63, and I started to learn What I Say and Pipeline, and so, and then my grandmother got me a K flat top for Christmas in 63. And so basically I got the bug to play electric guitar, but I had a K. So then I went to Finders Music downtown San Diego, and I got a Maroon Burst 62 Music Master, because I was a little kid then, virtually small guy.
Did you ever get your SG custom white?
Well, the SG came in 67, the Les Paul SG, but for me, the white Duosonic I ordered sounded better than the Mustang, because I liked the fixed bridge. It just sounded better tonally. And so I started playing, surf music, and Yardbirds and the Stones came out with the Beatles, and so I stuck with the Fender guitar. And so even in 67, the summer of 67, when we went to Haight-Ashbury that night, I learned Purple Haze off the radio, KFRC, with my white Duosonic sitting in my parents' station wagon. Little did I know I would end up playing with Mitch Mitchell for 2 years, playing a concert for Al Hendricks, doing shows with Noel Redding and so forth. So
you, out of all the guitars you own, do you part with guitars or you just keep them?
Well, I made the mistake of letting my Explorer go to Entwistle. I restored the Explorer bass from Lonnie Mac's bass player Wayne Bullock in 73, and Rick Derringer talked me into letting Steve Paul buy it for Randy Hobbs. And I had found a 58 Explorer in San Francisco for $2,200 through the Bergen brothers. So I flipped to San Francisco after letting my Explorer bass go. The only one that's ever been found. There is a Sunburst one out there that Mike Bloomfield's bass player told me about, and Buddy Miles. But the Explorer thing, happened for me in 73, when I started recording it with Jim Keltner. and Bobby Keys and Kuchmar, who wrote the song about my high school Fast Times for Cameron, who I grew up with, and Jackson Browne. And so I recorded the Explorer with Keltner for those sessions at the record plant. But I had met Don Preston in '70 with Leon Russell, and I'd never seen an Explorer before, but my guitar player, Mike Sterling, had a 59V, and he played that with our band, and I played my SG Les Paul and my 54 Strat that I bought in '68. So my Strat was number 2, but my SG Les Paul was number 1. But, and the Flying V sounded cool too. It was Carina, but I'd never seen an Explorer.
Did you ever think that these guitars would be worth $1 million?
No, not right away. But I knew that the Explorer and the Sunburst Les Paul were the top solid body guitars ever built. They were more valuable, but now Fenders are up in the 100 200 range.
Yeah,
some
of
but,
them. Yeah.
But Les Paul is like you appraised my Cherry 1960 Flametop, the Ted Brooks Les Paul, which I've had since '77. And so I was in the rental business with SIRs from the mid '70s for decades, and so I've worked studios and stuff. And so my Cherry Les Paul was on records with.
You still have that Les Paul?
Yeah, I have the Cherry Les Paul.
And it's a 59 or a
it's a 60.
Does it have a blade neck or does it have a fat neck?
It has a medium neck, and it's 8.3 pounds. So I let Jeff Beck record with it with Stanley Clarke when we did the Rock and Roll Jelly session. B.B. King used my Les Paul for the Midnight Believer album with the Crusaders, and Pat Thrall used it with Glenn Hughes on Big Borrow and Steel, and Bill Spooner used my Les Paul Flametop for Strung Out on Strings when I worked with the Tubes Now when we did the 3 weeks at the Whiskey back in '77.
How come I've never got to play your
You can play it when we get back to Kim's house.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best Les Paul I've ever played. It's light. It has a medium neck, and it has
Guess what I'm doing today, people.
It has a white, PAF in the bridge. Yep. And it's a wonderful Les Paul, but the scale length bothered me for years. I asked Les Paul, why can't you have a long scale Les Paul? Well, recently I bought one of the 2014 Les Paul long scales that Edwin Wilson pioneered, and I had bugged Gibson about long scale Les Paul, and within minutes of tuning it up to pitch, I strummed the Les Paul long scale acoustically, and it had a big sound.
I played that this morning, and I thought I said, you could play the Jimi Hendrix chord
remarkable.
On this thing.
The long scale Les Paul has huge tone.
What a great, I like why they didn't do that. I don't know.
It should have been a reality in the 50s, the long scale Les Paul, and 3 P90s. They should have done that too.
A couple of weeks ago, you let me play Eddie Lang's L5.
Yes.
Can you tell we don't have much time left, but this L5 is very unique. And why is that?
Well, I have 2 Gibsons that are historical. One is Dave Barber's ES5 Gibson, and Eddie Lang's original 31 L5, his pet guitar that he used with Bing Crosby. So Mitch Holder, my dear friend, he and I put on the first guitar show at Valley Arts at my cousin Mike McGuire's shop in Studio City. And so Mitch called one day and said that Eddie Lang's L5 was for sale in the Musician Union paper. So I called up there and talked to Kitty, who was a Ziegfeld girl back in the 20s, 30s, and she married Eddie Lang. And, through Dixie Crosby, she was her best friend, and so Bing Crosby's wife. So I drove up to Reno, and I met Kitty in person, and she had Eddie's favorite guitar and his tenor banjo. And he told me great stories about Eddie Lang and what it was like, when he was the top guitar player in the world with Bing Crosby and Paul Whiteman and all this stuff. So other people made offers on the guitar, and so she liked me, and she knew that I would show the guitar to many people. So Joe Pass was one of the first people to play Eddie's guitar when I bought it, and Thumbs Carlisle. And
is it true that it still has the original strings on it?
Well, when I bought it, it had Eddie's strings on it with a wound B and a 75 bass string. And so I still have Eddie's strings, but for his 100th birthday, when Mitch Holder and I did a duet of Carl Cress, Eddie Lang at John Paisano's guitar night, Mitch and I did all these cool songs, Eddie Lang stuff. And so I restrung the guitar, and I kept the 75 bass string on it. But now it has, a more modern guitar set on it. And Ren Ferguson is helping me with the bridge on the guitar.
That's a beautiful guitar, and you photographed that. It's in your book.
Well, I did a Guitar Player magazine article in '83 on it, and I took pictures with my grandfather's Leica of the guitar. So it was the Stradivarius. It is the Stradivarius of Gibson Archtops. Eddie picked it out of 5 guitars. Les Paul told me about it because he was there too. And everybody idolized Eddie Lang as the world's greatest guitar player, and so he picked out this L5 out of 5 guitars. With his friend played across the room, and so the wood is magnificent on it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And so it has a recorded history, and also with Ruth Edding in the movies on the train, and Bing Crosby standing behind the piano. So Eddie, pioneered jazz guitar, and this is the very guitar that he played for those years, and Kitty kept it, and Eddie Arnold played it just before I bought it, so I've had Eddie's guitar now. And I photographed it with Wes Montgomery's favorite L5 too. And then eventually my cousin Mike McGuire called me from Valley Arts and said that he had Dave Barber's ES5 Gibson from Nikki Foster, Peggy Lee's, and Dave Barber's daughter. So I came over, and Nikki brought the guitar down, and I bought Dave Barber's ES5, which is basically a 350 Premier single pickup guitar. And then I got a chance to, I performed with Mitch Mitchell for over 2 years around L.A. with Freebo and Lee Thornburg on trumpet and Freebo on bass. And so that was my primary guitar playing jazz fusion with Mitch Mitchell, Jimmy's drummer.
One thing
I use my Les Paul as a jazz guitar too, and right now I have flat wounds on my Les Paul, believe it or not. But of course, when we play Hendrix, I play my old Stratocaster.
Now, before we go, you're almost finished with 2 new books.
I have.
How many books are you making?
I have 2 new box sets, almost ready. 900 pages on Gibson, 1,000 pages on Fender.
Okay,
the whole inside story.
This is like nobody's else is going to have the information that you have.
Well, I went out and I interviewed Tal Farlow. I got to play with Tal. Barney Kessel introduced me to a lot of people in Hollywood, and so I have interviews with Harold Roberts.
These books are not. So these are going to be kind of like your
coffee table,
right? But
with all my photography,
like you're going to download all this knowledge of your life into these books,
well,
right?
It's over 5 decades of research and interviews.
Most of the pictures you've done?
I've done all the photography.
You took all the photography, okay.
Yeah, all the concert photography, and my interviews with Barney Kessel, Harold Roberts, Nick Lucas, Albino Ray.
Unbelievable.
I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I've transcribed all, and I do all my own layout on InDesign, basically. So
when do you think these books are going to be ready to go?
Well, I might self-publish, and basically... get that going, or I might go back with John Cerullo and so forth, who did my second Les Paul book and stuff. So right now,
I can't wait. I've of course I'm sitting with you, every once in a while going through the.
I showed you the layout.
Yeah, the layout stuff. I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah, well, it's in depth, and it's all about Gibson and Fender, and all of my years interviewing Leo Fender and Freddie Tavares.
It's gonna be something.
George.
It's gonna be something.
Yeah,
so
it's something I'm sure. And Santana tried to talk me out of it. Don't write books. You should be a famous guitar player. You have everything,
You bridged the gap. You bridged the gap.
Carlos, I want to share America's great heritage of guitars and play. And I've had the great opportunity to play with the world's greatest drummers.
Well, you brought the Martin 0034. And why don't you play us out? This is. Thank you so much. This is going to end season 3 of Buy That Guitar, and I can't wait to start season 4, but who knows when that'll be. But anyways, thank you guys for just coming in with me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And the stories that couldn't be put in his books are better.
Yeah, I know. I was there when you guys were talking to some of these
be well,
people.
Everybody, and keep picking, like Les Paul said.
Yeah, keep picking. And so my thanks to you guys, and special thanks Shane Matsumoto for all his help this year and last year. And these are actually, these podcasts, is Buy That Guitar podcasts, are actually, I get a lot of email. People do like them. So I'm proud to get the nice emails, and I just throw away the nasty ones. So anyways, we'll see you again next season. Thank you, guys. And we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Buy That Guitar, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine. Please support VG for all they do for guitar players like us. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment on this podcast. I'd love to hear from you at ram@vintageguitar.com. See you again next week. Bye-bye.
The official Vintage Guitar Magazine price guide has partnered with 33 of the top guitar dealers in the industry to provide the most accurate values for thousands of models. This includes electric guitars, acoustic guitars, basses, amplifiers, effects, mandolins, and banjos. Whether your instrument is an investment or simply a piece you enjoy playing, it's always helpful to know what it's worth. If you're checking out a guitar at your local shop and want to know its value before making the purchase, this guide is your go-to source for all the details. Available in both print and digital editions, you can have the guide right at your fingertips no matter where you go.